Welcome to Welcome to the Teaming Up Show, your resource for the future of real estate. I'm Josh Pomelo, joined again by Brian McWhite, and we're going to get a little bit more philosophy going here. We did 4 episodes today, and it's like, man, we're really hitting that philosophy thing. And I think something that's missing in some of our class, I won't say it's missing in some of the classes that we usually do, but I see in other ones especially, is that why do you do a certain thing a certain way?
Yeah.
And people know that they need to get as many listings or they need to knock on 1,000 doors and they'll get a ton of business, but they're like, how do I get myself to do it?
Right.
That's the biggest step, right?
I think we're just recognizing in some of these videos that your business life and the way that you think and your psychology, your emotions, your spirituality, your physicality, they all interweave.
Big time.
Nobody exists in a vacuum.
No
business exists in a vacuum.
No.
Every business is run is run around real people who have to be able to think through these things and understand the why of what they're doing.
Right. You're not going to just be able to have a checklist and say, oh, that's checked and that's checked. No, because this changes and you have to be on your toes and be able to be what our question is.
Right. So, until real estate is completely run by robots, we
Which that'd be great. We could hire
get out of
robots.
Here. Exactly.
Go sit on the beach somewhere.
So we have to be able to think through these things. Well, one of the questions that came up in a class recently, Josh is big on self-awareness. And so the question was, how do you develop that? Why do you think that's so important?
Yeah, and I was thinking that, what's the one thing I could give to someone?
And maybe define self-awareness too. What do you mean by that?
Thank you thanks for putting me. Here's the ledge. See you later. Well, self-awareness, and I guess I was going to get into my definition of it was going to get into how I would tackle it and how I would learn about it, but I really think it's knowing who you are, knowing when you're presented with situations, what's really going on, understanding. It's a hard thing to define, right?
Sounds cliche, but understanding what you're good at and what you're not.
Exactly. And that's
every competitive person wants to be great at everything, and no competitive person is great at everything.
Right.
LeBron James isn't great at everything.
No, he's not.
And so a big part of it is understanding what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and then knowing that you have to find a way to address your weaknesses, either by making them stronger or by hiring someone to do them for you.
Right. How, if you're not self-aware, because I was going to say, one of the number one things I give someone in our organization would be self-awareness. Maybe a video before where we talked about grit, it might be that. So I'd say it's somewhere between that, and if you can have both, it's a home run, self-awareness and grit. But with someone that isn't self-aware, how are they're not even going to know that they need to do something, meaning they're not going to need to know that they need to grow, or that they need to read these books to study this to learn. They're not going to know what their biggest weaknesses are and how to fix them, or the biggest strengths and how to maximize them. And I think that's business. I think that's the secret. Other than like grit, I think that's the secret of business, is constantly working on yourself to get better, and that's going to push the organization to grow as you get bigger and better. Right?
So how do they do that? If you've got a weakness, a gap in your skill set or whatever it might be that you don't actually know that you have, how are you ever going to know about it?
That I would take that right out of we read that book together, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and one thing in there that was eye-opening, and just reading a lot of business books and being open to not be right, but get to the right answer. So seeking the truth, right? And being totally comfortable with knowing that you're not going to know what's right every time. You're not going to know what you need to be doing. But if you listen to the people, so what's the one thing that I can do to get more self-aware? I think probably listen to the people around you and surround yourself with really bright and smart people that will be comfortable with saying, like, that's a dumb idea. Right? Because how do you become self-aware? Because I don't think if you sit in a vacuum, or even maybe if you read some books or you study, I don't think it's just going to come on to you like,
Sure.
Right? I don't know.
You have
What's
to,
your opinion?
You have to invite it. And Josh models this, by the way, really well. Josh knows more about the real estate business and how to create a real estate business. He's forgotten more about it than I'll ever know.
Oh, gosh.
But even when Josh comes into an executive team meeting where there's 4 other people in there, Josh presents his ideas and where he thinks we should go and invites input. And there are times where people say, I don't think that's going to work, and here's why. And Josh hears that. So he hears it from people who have probably less knowledge than he has, but then he also has coaches who will challenge him on what he's doing.
For sure.
From a position of having more knowledge than Josh.
Sure.
And Josh listens to that.
When we were talking about our executive meeting, when we were saying like our next steps, I mean, there was probably 5 or 6 ideas we brought to our coach, and he's like, nope. And I was like all in. I was like, we're doing this. Bryan said he's taking this on. We're going to take over the country, and we already have like the 20 steps, and when your mind is decided on something and you're going to go all these steps, and this is what you're going to do. I mean, then your coach goes, denied, and it's like, how many people when that denial happens stop and then restart a whole nother thing?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's really tough. It was really, really tough for me to change my brain and say, okay, I'm going to forget everything I thought there. I spent 3 weeks on that, and I'm going to go completely 180 direction, go the other way.
Right. And it's not as though you're a slave to what your coach says or to what we say, but Josh honestly invites feedback and criticism and to help him make good decisions.
Do you?
I think I do, but I think that filters down to like what you're saying, to a personal level where being self-aware means that you are willing to invite people's opinion or analysis or critique of how you're doing. Yeah. You're creating a culture of transparency with yourself and all the people around you. And that's something we really value in the Pomerleau team, is this culture of transparency where we're able to critique each other, suggest areas of improvement, ask questions about why we did something the way that we did it, without, hopefully, creating an atmosphere where people feel threatened by that.
Right.
And because that's the enemy. Whenever that idea that because someone's questioning how I did something, I'm threatened, or a culture of passive aggressiveness comes in, that is, if I'm anything on the Pomerleau team besides listing agent, I am the squasher of passive aggressiveness.
That's great.
I want
that's tough. That creeps up.
It does.
Creeps up.
It does.
Even with
because we're human
people.
beings.
Right.
But to be self-aware, you have to be someone who invites criticism and actually listens to it, not just plays lip service to it so that you look like you're listening to it.
But how many people can do that?
Very few.
Which is kind of...
It takes a lot of confidence and self-assuredness, I think. And humility.
Yeah.
How many people have self-confidence and humility? Those seem diametrically opposed, but they're both crucial.
No, I mean, when you're talking about they're opposed from each other, I battle with that stuff all the time. Being super, super confident, and I was even talking about my wife about this, being super, super confident, but at the next drop of a hat, you're super humble of like, you don't know anything. You don't know anything. I always just go straight to absolutes, but it's not necessarily an absolute. It's like, I have to understand that I could be, I'm super confident, but that could be super wrong in this. And I'm wanting people around me I look at it like this, like I'm on a cliff and I'm going to jump. I'm going to take a step forward and know that there looks like a boulder there, or it could be an invisible, or be a boulder and it's not really there and it moves and then you fall off the cliff. I look at it, that's when I want people to give me that type of feedback so I don't jump off that cliff, because the people that can't see, that people aren't open to feedback are going to people that are going to go jump off the cliff. They're going to fall right off because they don't even know it, right?
Sure.
They don't even know that they're making this huge mistake. And so I don't want to make that huge mistake more than I want to be right.
Right.
I would rather get the truth than be fine with that.
I think that somebody who's both self-confident and humble thinks a lot like this. And this
is good.
This thought process.
I'm learning.
This thought process goes through my mind a lot. And it's going to sound terrible, but hear me out.
No.
When someone has something to say to me about something that I feel like I know a lot about, as soon as they say it, my initial internal reaction is usually, "You're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about." But hopefully some humility kicks in and forces me to say, sure, okay, let me hear what you have to say. And then I actually listen to it, even though I already think it's stupid. I actually listen to it, and half the time I realize, you know what, there's some truth in that, or it's just wholesale true, and I need to change what I thought was stupid because I'm actually the stupid one.
And I've seen Bryan go through that, and I think, being next to people like that is so huge, because you need multiple people to that kind of humility and that self-aware to foster that into your organization, because that's a really hard thing to teach. And I think it just happens over time with you being around those type of people that will actually stop and listen to that other point, even though you were on the opposite point,
right?
Just before.
So last thing before we get too long here.
Yep.
Okay, now I've become more of a self-aware person because I invite criticism, I invite critique, and I now understand where my weaknesses are. Now what do I do?
Okay, so I'm a self-aware person.
In real estate. Now what
exactly.
do I do?
What do I do? I was like, oh, well, we could start a bagel shop. No, in real estate, I mean, that's where your organization will go from you to us. Because without that, I think that's a big thing what no one talks about. That's a big thing that stops people from going from them and maybe one other person that they keep burning out and then go to the next person. Without that self-awareness, Gene, but say I got that. Without that, you can't go from me to us. And if you go to us, it's going to break down. It's going to go to you again, because
you're talking about hiring.
Yeah. So I think, what I'm saying in my head is like, what's the next step now that I'm self-aware? That was the question, right? That is going to be like the foundation of that, my ability to be able to hire, because I'm going to know my strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly.
My strengths and weaknesses. If I'm a self-aware person, I'm going to know the strengths and weaknesses of the organization. I'm going to understand markets better. I'm going to understand people better. So that's going to be basically the catalyst to you being able to hire other people and work with them, because you're going to see things from like a full scale.
Yep.
And I think, like you said again, is to understand that you are going to be, I think to understand that you're going to be wrong more than you're going to be right, be 100% comfortable with that, and then just always seek other people's opinion that you like, you trust, that are going to challenge, not just say yes. Mm-hmm. Because if you have a bunch of people that say, I'm in some meetings with Nate once in a while, and he'll say, yeah. And I'll say, Nate, like, don't just say yeah to me because I want to hear that. And he isn't saying yes for that reason. But I want to hear no, you're an idiot if it's wrong. Mm-hmm. Even if I end up being right, I want someone to even just say that once in a while, because more likely I won't jump off that cliff, make a huge mistake that we can't recover from.
So in other words, you want to hire into your weaknesses, because we want to recognize that everyone's got a very slim margin for what they are really amazingly good at. And then you got a few things and then you've got a few things that you're kind of good at, and then you've got a few things that you're not very good at. Yep. And when you start out in real estate, you kind of have to do all these things.
You do.
But as you hire, you want to hire someone to do this piece and this piece, so that you can focus in on the things that you're amazing at and kind of good at, and then hire these things out so that eventually everyone else is doing the things that you're kind of good at and not very good at, and you are only focusing on the thing that you are the best at.
And that's very good. I was thinking about that analogy the other day when I was doing this class and thinking about the sun. If there was one bright spot in the sun, it wouldn't be that bright.
Sure.
But just like you said, if every individual is super bright, then you're going to have a sun, and that's the same thing with the organization. It's going to be awesome when everyone in that position. I look at Nate and Andy and Bryan, and where they're in their positions. I mean, they're just like sunspots, and you put all of us together, we create a sun.
Yeah.
We create this energy that you can't even contain, right?
That's good.
So, thanks for joining us again on another episode of Teaming Up, and we'll see you. I think we're done for today, so you're going to probably see us maybe in a couple weeks or something like that.
Sounds good.
All right.